Hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Lord, and welcome again inside the state capitol as we begin another legislative session under the Gold Dome. And we are honored to have leadership from both sides of the chambers today. Senate President Randy Smith and House Speaker Roger Hanshaw. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us as we discuss some of the issues that we'll be going over the next couple of months. Speaker Hanshaw, I'd like to begin with you. This is not your first rodeo. You've been Speaker for a while now. Just talk a little bit about what makes this unique with new administration coming in, some new challenges to face, and a super duper majority in the House.
Sure, Rick, happy to be back. So our number one obligation, in fact the only obligation that the Constitution places upon the legislature, is to deliver a state budget every year. So everything we do is, I shouldn't say everything, most of what we do is framed around getting a budget delivered within the 60 days of the regular legislative session. That's been a priority of ours for the past decade. We'll continue to make it a priority here. We do have a new administration, and that's always a time to reset priorities. It's a time to work with new leaders in the governor's office and each of the departments of the executive branch to find out what direction they want to take the state, and then see how well it meshes with what the elected members of the legislative branch, the delegates and senators, want to do and accomplish for local districts. So we remain pretty focused on trying to keep moving the state forward in a positive way economically. We want to continue to make investments in infrastructure. We want to continue to do the things that attract top economic recruits here to West Virginia, but we want to do that in a way that's responsible. We've done what I believe to be a good job managing the overall growth of the state budget over the course of the past 5 years. In terms of next to no growth, we've budgeted on a fairly flatline basis during that time, and I expect we'll do so again, simply because it allows us to make one-time capital investments in things like infrastructure, things like paying down long-term liabilities at the end when we see what we have left. President Smith, have you had a chance to meet with Governor Morrissey yet in the incoming administration? What have those talks been like?
Yes, the Speaker and I both have been fortunate enough. We've met with him several times, and they've been positive. He's trying to fill us out, each body, and we're trying to fill him out, his administration, to see what he wants, because it's a whole new administration.
Sure.
I mean, all of his people are new at this, and he's new at it. I have 10 new members in the Senate, which is unheard of. That has never casted a vote, never been in the process. So it's going to be a learning curve for a lot of us. I'm new in my position, and but the conversations we've had with the governor, he's been very open and transparent with us, and as well as we've been open and transparent with him, what we're dealing with. And we just basically, like the Speaker said, just want to continue, moving economic development forward, economic growth. And the budget is we're not like the federal government. We can't just spend all we want to. We have to have a balanced budget before we can leave here. So that's the number one priority. Everything we do is based around the budget. And, I've got a new finance chair, and, we've got a basically new everybody.
Everything, a whole new world for you.
Yeah, whole new world.
Let me ask you this. What are some of the unique challenges that you face now coming in as the new president and the leader of that body, when you only have 2 Democrats? So you have a mandate for sure. And a lot of times what you'll see when you have that kind of majority is that it's hard to keep everyone together, because it tends to fracture off a little bit, because everyone wants to go their own route with their own philosophies. How do you keep 34 or 32, 32 out of the 34 are Republicans. How do you keep them focused and centered on a common goal?
Well, you can't. Because each one of us has got our own personality. We got 34 different personalities in there, and 30, different passions. Different people are passionate about that. That's why we caucus, and try to work the differences out in caucus. And honestly, if we have 20, when we had 20 or 21 or whatever, it was the same process. You just have more more people with more opinions, that has more power.
Now you still represent everybody.
Yes,
regardless.
the whole state.
So how do you make sure that you are still letting the Democrats' voices and the people that they represent in their districts be heard amongst the sea of Republicans?
Yeah, well, I've had a good open relationship with we have 2 Democrats now, and I'm friends with both of them. And my office is open to them just as well as it is the Republicans. And they have concerns, of course, on we have different opinions on. All of us want to do what's best for the state. I mean, there's not a senator in there that doesn't want to do what's best for the state in their mind, but everyone's got a different avenue or a different way
sometimes it's like
to go by
cats.
Yeah, it's not quite as bad as the speaker who has 100. He has a hard job because he has 100 different personalities.
He's a seasoned pro at it.
Yeah, he is, and he does a good job at it.
Speaker Hanshaw, I wanted to bring this up. Every session is unique, and this year's session almost seems to be starting with somewhat of a mystery with the actual numbers, because we heard for years from former Governor Justice that we had this wonderful surplus, and now Morrissey comes in and says, well, we not only do we not have that, we actually have a shortfall. Have you been able to deep dive into those numbers at all? Have you been able to keep in touch with the Revenue Secretary? And what's going on here? Was it just an accounting issue? Is it just a different way of looking at different numbers? I mean, people want to know exactly how much money do we really have to work with.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, Rick, because it's overlaying a lot of the conversation we're having as we get ready to head into the beginning of business at noon today. I think it is more a question of how you allocate liabilities more than wildly divergent estimates. And let me give you a specific example of what I mean by that. So the previous administration, I believe, properly identified that at the end of each year we had X amount of dollars in surplus, and we know that because we allocated those resources and made investments with them. They, to best of my knowledge, never produced a long-term projection of where the state would be multiple years out, accounting for the growth in certain programs that, if unchanged, will result in substantial expenditures into the future. So one of the best examples of that right now is the program that the legislature created a couple years ago that provides funding for educational opportunities for students not in the public school system. It's referred to as the Hope Scholarship Program. We've accounted for that in our budget. We've appropriated the necessary resources for that in congruence with the law that we passed. But what we've not done, because it's not been time to do it yet, is account for the long-term longitudinal growth of that program over time. So what I believe Governor Morrissey's doing in his pronouncements to the state about the fiscal status of our budget is factoring in what he believes to be the growth of some of those programs over time. That program in particular is expected to grow tens of millions of dollars just
because they're opening it up to more
correct
children.
Just this year alone. So I believe the governor is accounting for that growth in program and others like it in his budget for outlying fiscal years, and saying to us we need to begin accounting for what could be a revenue shortfall in out years. So I think it's more a question of just how you define liabilities in a longitudinal time rather than wildly different views of the state's fiscal status.
Now you've been on the record a few times since Patrick Morrissey came in saying that this will be challenging, that it's going to be hard work. And it doesn't just seem to be lip service. There seems to be something behind that, and it's not necessarily you're speaking cryptically. It's just I don't know if anyone's really drilled down on exactly where you're going with that. There's a specific quote that I found interesting from you. It says, you said, it will require that we think differently about our work as a legislature. Mm-hmm. It will require that we engage differently and more deeply with the executive branch, referencing the new administration and the challenges that you face. Can you explain that a little bit deeper about what you mean and what makes this session so much more challenging for you?
Yeah, I gave that quote not in the context of the budget, but in the context of what are the big problems that we have left to solve as a state. Since Senator Smith and I have been here, in the decade that I've been here and the dozen years the Senator's been here, we've tackled a lot of really important things. We've done a lot of things that have put the state on a great trajectory, and I'm proud of those things. But we still have a lot of big challenges left, and that's what I meant there, and I'll still mean it today. To solve some of the big problems that are left require more than just us passing a bill, require more than just us passing a statute and taking a victory lap.
So what are some of those big things?
So we have, for example, we still have a lot to do in terms of child welfare in West Virginia. We have a lot of children still in foster care in West Virginia, 6,000 plus young people in the care of the state. We've passed bill after bill after bill, and they're all necessary. We did good work on all of them to make dents and make impacts on improving the child welfare system in West Virginia. But it still remains a problem. So rather than pass more and more statutes that may or may not address the problem directly, we want to actually engage more with the new administration. We want to ask questions about, okay, why did the bill that we passed last year not solve the problem? Why did the bill that we passed 2 years ago not solve the problem? And what specific input can you give us as the people charged with implementing the law, with actually executing what we said we wanted you to do? What input specifically can you give us on what to do next? Right. And that's what I meant there, and I still mean it today.
Is that something you concur with? It appears as though the route that the speaker's taking here is there are some things that you can't just merely legislate your way out of, that you have to find the root causes and really dig deeper and figure out how to fundamentally change something to fix the issue.
And he's correct. We have a lot of moving parts. The substance abuse problem, it's a huge problem. And how do you fix it? I mean, there's so many, we've passed so many bills in the last several years trying to address certain areas of it or whatever. And like you said, you find out, well, there's a loophole here, or that you have to fix or close, or this isn't working, and so it's constantly moving parts. One of the problems with the budget is PEIA, and it's nobody's fault. If we give pay raises, we know what that's going to cost year after year after year. But with the rising healthcare cost, and it's just not PEIA, it's a national problem, but it's hard to budget for like PEIA or try everybody wanting a fix for PEIA, 100% funded. Well, you can't 100% fund something that you don't know what the final number is going to be, because there's no final number on that, because PEIA healthcare costs is continually rising every year, and so. There are just so many working parts on. I mean, you pass one bill, and honestly, I'd say over the next couple of years, you pass 2 or 3 bills to address the problems with the bill you passed 3 years ago. So it's continuously, it's a moving part, and it's just hard to, it's not like we sit around at night thinking, oh, we're going to pay, I got an idea. It's
Everything's complex, and every bill matters.
And people don't realize a lot of the bills that we pass comes from our constituents.
Sure.
The problems, I mean, it's not that I'll come up with an idea or something that I think's a fix, or I want to address. Every representative does, but the majority of the bills are from the general public.
And everyone has a different big issue. So you have to make sure that you're handling every bill with that in mind, because it does matter to somebody. An issue that a lot of people are worried about I shouldn't say worried, but keeping their eyes on for sure, is vaccine legislation. Mm-hmm. A lot of people wondering if the regulations might be eased up a little bit. I know that the governor has already passed an executive order allowing for more religious exemptions, and people are kind of wondering, well, what are those exemptions? How will that look? Is that something that you expect to take up in the Senate in terms of loosening vaccine regulations?
I mean, that'll be one of the first things we address and get out of there, so it's not clogging up, because we're one of 5 states that allows 0. I mean, vaccine, people want to, and what's brought that on, I think the speaker might agree with that, the COVID.
It did. I do agree with that.
That's what has brought this to the front and center, because people were forced to take a vaccine that nobody knew about. I mean, even the governor, and you're hearing now, it causes
this. It's almost like retroactively causing people to be like, well, what else have we done?
And people don't want to, people lost their jobs, couldn't go to school. I mean, it's just the military even, got kicked out of the military because they would not take a vaccine that was forced, that they didn't believe in.
Sure.
The president's exactly right about that one, Rick, and that's an important point on this issue, is the situation around COVID has really clouded everything else. So it's important to distinguish, though, that COVID's become the common cold now. People for the most part, the virulence of that pathogen has died down to the point now that it's endemic. It's effectively the common cold. Did we have an overreaction as society on COVID? Arguably, we did, but we can't let that cloud our thinking and judgment on other things that are not the common cold at all. Polio, mumps, rubella, the measles, those aren't the common cold. Those things kill people.
And those are different, structurally, fundamentally different vaccines in that they're not mRNA.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different world.
And they're proven.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people that might disagree with that stance brings me to another issue. Might not have the same opportunities as they did in the past to voice their opinions on the floor because of some infrastructure in the House and structural issues have come to light, and you've pretty much are going to be changing the way that bills go through that body, or that the public has a chance to react to. Is that accurate?
Not really. We'll create.
There will still be public hearings on the floor.
There'll be public hearings in our committees. Yeah, there'll be opportunities.
But that's
for public
not on
input.
the floor.
No, but what it is an opportunity for actual dialogue.
Right.
So what we used to see out here on the floor of our house was a 1 hour block where X number of people showed up, and I've seen situations in which someone's been allocated a time of as little as 45 seconds to step up there and speak their piece. I don't know what you can say in 45 seconds. I have trouble saying good morning in 45 seconds. So what we wanted to do was actually create an opportunity for meaningful engagement. What we really want to do here is give an opportunity for our committees to really engage with individuals who have input to offer, rather than say your 45 seconds are up, next speaker.
But those committee rooms aren't very large, so if you do have a polarizing bill where a lot of people want to speak, well then they must be given that right to speak. Is that going to create some issues with trying to get?
No, I don't think so. What you're talking about is a single-digit number of bills once a year, Rick. The majority of legislation that we take up is sort of the nuts and bolts of government, how government works, what's the right way to solve a problem, and that's where we need testimony the most. That's where we need public input the most. That's where we need factual development of issues the most, because we need to find out what's worked elsewhere, what's worked well, what didn't work at all, and that we've got to avoid and not repeat at all costs. So that's the kind of factual development that we want to do, and the kind of really building up of our factual predicate for the bills that we pass.
And will it be 3 days for each bill now to bring the bill to the floor to mark up, discuss?
So it's likely to be 2. So it's likely to be public input and hearing on day 1, then amendment and markup on day 2 at a minimum. Now that's not a maximum. What I expect we'll see is that each of those days may take more than 1 day, because I prefer to call them stages rather than days, because the hearing stage itself might take more than 1 day.
Sure.
And likewise, the markup of amendments might take more than 1 day. So I'm describing it more in terms of stages rather than days, because what I've told our committee chairs is if the hearing stage on this bill takes 2 meetings, takes 3 meetings, then it takes 2 or 3 meetings.
Senate President Randy Smith, what are some of the things that you really, really hope to accomplish over the next 60 days? I know you guys have a lot of work to do, and we've discussed some of the issues already. But what's your passionate bill this session? What are you hoping to make sure that we can get done and get through for the people?
Myself, I don't have a passionate bill. I learned a long time ago you never get married to a bill, or you get your heart broke. And that happens quite often, so that's what happens. Someone gets, my passion is, we've got 34 senators that represents 17 different districts, and every one of those districts is different. And and each senator has, something they're passionate about. I'm passionate about roads and broadband and economic development, especially West Virginia small business. That's my passion going forward, is that we do more for the small businesses in West Virginia, because we got to have them, and we did a good job over the years of bringing in the big players, and we're still going to continue. It creates 5 jobs, 2,000 jobs, or whatever. but the majority of our employment is small business in West Virginia, and just trying to get the hurdles out of the way for small businesses that, that they can thrive, and even get programs where most small businesses fail because people know the business, but they don't know the financial part of it or the regulation part of it like that, and try to work programs to get that. But I want every senator to have their voice for their district.
Are you excited to work with the new administration and bring the legislative and executive bodies together?
Yeah, I'm always excited. And the House, we've talked about it. I want to have a good relationship with the House. I've served there 4 years. I'm one of our few members that served in minority, and I know how we was treated when we was in the minority, and I don't want to treat anybody else like that.
That is true. That's a priority.
That's good.
Priority, and Speaker and I has talked on numerous occasions. We want to have a good working relationship with the House and the Senate, and I know what his obstacles and his problems are over there with his body. He knows what mine is, and we're going to work together. And I've got a good relationship with a lot of the members at the House, and I've been open to them, and I've had several. I had 2 in my office this morning from the House, so I just want to open that up. Same way with the governor's office.
Always easy to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed on the opening day. We'll see what happens by crossover day.
Well,
Mr. Speaker, give me your vision for a successful session in 2025.
Yeah, we're trying to take on some big challenges this year, Rick. That's the charge I've given to our committee chairs and our members. So, for example, it's been 2 decades now since we've done a meaningful, comprehensive, to use your words, deep dive into how we fund public education in West Virginia. Our school funding formula is at least a couple decades old now. So we'll begin as early as this week holding hearings on how we fund public education, because we know that the challenges that face the kind of rural school systems that the President and I represent have become different over time than the challenges that face Cabell County, Monongalia County here in Charleston. They're just different. So our school funding formula has to reflect those differences. We do have challenges in attracting and retaining public employees here in our system. That used to not be the case, but it's become the case now. Our PEIA program is a component of that. So we've got to make sure that our insurance program that provides that employee benefit to West Virginia workers is sound and viable for the long term. So that's a priority for us as well. One of our subcommittees in our Committee on Finance will be holding hearings on what the long-term structure of that should be. Should it change, and if it should change, how? We're going to spend a lot of time this year in our body just talking about problems. There may or may not even be a bill associated with them. Some of the changes that we believe need to be made are likely makeable now. The executive branch likely has statutory authority to make some of these changes now. They just need some input from us on what the public out here is thinking as to the proper direction for the state. So we're going to spend a lot of time doing that, and if we do, and if on the other side of that we've solved some problems, that's a win.
All right, we'll get to work. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. We appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll be checking back with you over the course of the next 60 days.
Okay.
As the session
All right,
continues.
appreciate it.
President Randy Smith, Speaker of the House Roger Hanshaw, and we'll be right back to get another angle of all of this. We've been speaking with a couple of Republicans. We have a Democrat next on Outside the Echo Chamber when we come back.
Are you ready to unlock a future filled with remarkable pay, unbeatable benefits, and unparalleled satisfaction? Imagine embarking on a journey that offers you a college-level education without the weight of debt, all while earning a steady income. Look no further than the West Virginia Building and Construction Trades Apprenticeship Programs. Join us, and together, let's build a future that's brighter and stronger. Go to actwv.org to apply today. The West Virginia Building and Construction Trades, where the future is forged.
Welcome back inside the state capitol. We spent the first segment talking to Republican leadership. We want to bring in a Democrat now, Delegate Sean Fluharty. I don't know if you had a chance to hear what the gentleman said. I'm sure you'll have a different take on a lot of things, but I'm
sure I will.
I want to start with kind of the mystery that this entire session is beginning with, where we had 8 years of then Governor Justice saying how we had this wonderful surplus.
Yeah.
Everything was rosy, nothing to worry about. And now the new administration comes in, and Patrick Morrissey says, no. Not only do we not have a surplus, we're actually operating with a shortfall now.
Yeah.
How much money do we have? Does anybody know?
Well, I think it's interesting within the GOP tent right now, the supermajority. under President Biden, we had surpluses after surpluses after surpluses. And Governor Morrissey comes in and he's projecting an economic downturn under President Trump. So
you're taking this federal already,
Who
Sean.
within, well, there's a problem with this. So first off, who within the GOP was lying at the time, if it's true that we have a $400 million deficit projected? And also, why aren't we spending more time raising revenue in our state? I mean, I think that's the main issue. We spend so much time on reactionary social issues. You're going to hear it tonight. Governor Morrissey's going to take the podium, and he's going to talk about stuff that is completely irrelevant to your daily life. He's going to say that he fought against men and women's sports, and he believes a man's a man, a woman's woman, all these things that really get us fighting with each other. And he proudly closed down the DEI office at West Virginia University that nobody even knew existed, quite frankly. Okay, so all these things he's going to talk about, but yet we have a $400 million deficit. So what's that tell you? We need to raise new revenue.
And how do you do that?
Well, there's multiple ways to do that. First off, we've been pushing adult use cannabis for years. That's raising new revenue without raising taxes.
Ever have legs
in
West
this
Virginia?
Legislature? They think it's 1925, not 2025. No, we're going to have a hard time doing anything like that. But at the end of the day, the things we're talking about with Under the Dome for the next 60 days, are they relevant to your daily life? If you're sitting down at the kitchen table tonight and you're looking at a $1,000 electricity bill, and you're wondering how you're going to be able to pay for your child care because we have some of the worst child care prices in the entire country, and then a child in this state is more likely to grow up in poverty than he or she is to become a college graduate. These are issues that are what responsible government talks about.
Now,
and we're not. You know we're not.
Well, Speaker Hanshaw did bring up that child care was an important issue. The foster care system's out of whack, continues to be. They did pass some legislation last year, but there's still a lot of work to be done. He did make it seem as though some of those social issues that I think have appeal across the aisle would get worked on. What are some of the issues that are passionate to you and that you expect to bring up on the floor? Because I know you don't hold back.
No, we don't hold back because I think many people that have been here for a number of years, like I have, are just sick and tired of hearing about all this nonsense that doesn't affect your daily life. You know, we had Rayleigh's Law on the House floor last year, which we've been pushing for a number of years, to protect kids from child abusers. And yet we were able to get it out of the House successfully through an amendment process. Then it went over to the Senate and never even got a hearing. So, I mean, there's so many issues within that framework of childcare. It's just not the cost of childcare. It's actually protecting the kids as well. But yet they want to run these bills to protect homeschoolers to the infinite degree without any checks or balances, and it's not responsible. So, you know, as we move forward, you're going to see that issue come up again. You're going to hear about it tonight. It's interesting if we're going to hear any actual policy from the governor tonight, because all I've heard so far is slogans. Backyard brawl, we're going to compete. Well, if we're going to compete, then adult cannabis should be on the table. We're going to compete in every facet. Okay, name a policy point that he has put forward that we can then take through the legislative process and get on the board. I haven't heard that. Have you heard anything?
Not so far, but we'll find out more tonight for sure. I'll be there listening as well.
I think we're waiting with bated breath about what we're going to hear. And this $400 million downturn that he's projecting under President Trump is a real issue. And I wonder if finally we're going to work on raising revenue in this state and not relying on the federal government as much as we have.
Now, I know that you work closely with Minority Leader Sean Hornbuckle, the two Seans. Let me ask you this. Have you guys had any discussions about the challenges that you face now with such a minority when you're dealing with a body that is so overwhelmingly Republican? There are times when you have to be more vocal. There are times when you really do have to step up and not create a charade at all, but create a scene so that you can be heard. I mean, how do you navigate that when you have such small numbers in that body?
Well, it makes it tough through the rules process and procedurally when you're talking about the number of members we have on committees, for example. We're going to be reduced to 2 on major committees, and that means it's a heavy lift for each member. So it's more work for myself and others in the Democratic committee. But, you know, we pride ourselves on just being truthful and speaking the truth, especially to power, and letting people know when the bullshit, the BS, I guess I shouldn't say the full word, when the BS arises, we bring it up. Because, you know, I think the functionality of being in the minority party is making sure these issues that we're not talking about, we are. When we're passing legislation that's not going to impact your daily life, but it fills up the newspapers and gets people fighting with each other, which I think is really the goal here. You know, whether you're talking federally, or you're talking the state level, or even the county or city level, our politics is so divided right now.
How did we get to this point?
We could spend the rest of the day talking about that.
It just seems like, especially in West Virginia, you know, environmental issues used to just be bipartisan. Like, I mean, who's against dirty water. You know what I'm saying? So how do we get back to the point where there can be debate, there can be compromise, there can be an issue that doesn't have to be an automatic way over here or way over here?
Well, we need more adults in the room, and that's what we do as a Democratic Minority Caucus. We're the adults in the room. We're bringing up those issues, and when they're passing these bills this session, you're going to see them right out the gate, social issue after social issue, complete nonsense. We're going to stand up and say, does this create a job? Who is this helping, actually? Because I feel we've pushed legislation out of here. You see it every election year. Mailers going out. I had so many mailers against me this election process. It was laughable. I could, you
look good on some of them.
They probably cut down 1,000 trees just to send out the mailers against me. But all that nonsense.
Does it go both ways?
It just gets people fighting with each other.
Right, but is there give and take here? Is there some I know you've brought up the men and women sports thing.
Which was a federal issue, which was taken care of by President Trump, right? It's a federal issue. It's not a state issue.
And they're what they will say is that's common sense. Keep boys out of girls' sports.
Sure, it is. It's a federal issue. Stay in your lane. So that's my point. Politically, we drive things through the legislature for pure politics, not policy. That's
an important difference.
There's an important difference. Policy is complicated. It is hard and it takes time. Politics is easy. Politics gets you on a mailer. So when they run this legislation through and I stand up as an attorney and say, wait a minute, this is an issue, it's superseding a constitutional power. This is not for the legislative branch, this is for the executive branch. Or this is not a state issue, this is a federal issue. But yet it falls on deaf ears because that's a mailer. It doesn't matter. And so that's where we've reached our point in the politics, is maintaining power in a supermajority. And the biggest DEI program we've had in the state of West Virginia is gerrymandering. I mean, we have 9 Democrats left, and we have 91 Republicans. Do you think they're all there on merit?
Is it becoming increasingly harder to find that middle ground now, where the margin? I mean, in the Senate now, it's 32-2.
Yeah.
Is it becoming harder as the numbers grow?
Well, I think our politics have shifted from the local level. What was the mantra? All politics is local. It's not anymore. It's federal. It's
right.
national.
How many people know who's on their school board or on the city council?
That's a great point. I mean, we're inundated with 24/7 news cycles, and I feel like every day there's breaking news, but is it really breaking news? But it's clickbait. Right. So That's where we're at. And with social media being the way it is currently, and everybody wants to fight with each other.
Toxic.
But I think that's kind of the goal, is to keep people fighting with each other while the people in power don't really have your back. They sell you a bill of goods, and they keep you fighting over some nonsense. I mean, Governor Morrissey's first big policy objective was closing the DEI program at WVU. I had a long email from an individual who received tutoring from the DEI school when she was in undergrad, went on to become a lawyer, went to the law school, stayed in West Virginia, is providing back immensely to our state and our state coffers by working hard, making money, and giving back. Now we're closing down a program, and she was a white woman. And so, this idea that this DEI program that was Morrissey's big objective, it actually is going to hurt people who actually stay in the state and give back.
Have you spoken with the governor at all?
No, I have not at this point. I mean, he's had his transition time. We've had a 30-day session. I haven't had any direct talks with him, but I can read the press releases like everybody else. I see what's coming down the road. And like the main goal when we talk about where do we stand as a party, it's keeping our young and best and brightest here. We've been pushing the Stay in the State Act for a number of years, which would bring back tax credits to individuals who want to stay in West Virginia.
It's
essentially an extension of the Promise Scholarship, which is a very successful Promise Scholarship of allowing kids to go to school, but we haven't done anything on the back end to say, well, we need to keep you here. And even those individuals graduate with immense student loan debt. We have some of the highest student loan debt in the entire country in West Virginia. A lot of times because they leave for a job that may pay them $10,000 more, knowing they have that debt. So let's have a credit program in place to keep our best and brightest here. But that takes time. And that takes committee hearings. And that takes both sides working together. It's a lot easier to run legislation that is political legislation and not good policy.
Sometimes you have to play the game, though, right? In the game of politics, to get the wins that are important to you, sometimes you have to go along, especially when your numbers are so limited. I mean, it would seem that there are times when you have to pick your battles, so to speak. And that
I agree with that. I mean, I've had legislation move despite being in the minority. The speaker sponsored legislation with myself just last session. So there are things that we can find agreement on, but we don't lead with that. The first things out the gate this session are going to be all politics. It's not going to be policy. And that's where we have a problem.
Do you think that the governor will be at least physically more accessible?
Oh yeah, I think
he seems
Governor
to
Morsi, look,
be around here.
I'm not going to agree with him on everything, but I'll give him due credit. He will be here. He will get in the weeds and he will work as governor. Now, whether I agree with what that work is and what it looks like could be two different things. But I'll give him credit there. He will be here. He will not be an absentee governor like we have with Governor Justice. I mean, you're more likely to find him coaching girls basketball than you are governing the state of West Virginia or now in D.C.
So give me your vision of what, from the Democratic side of things, what a successful 2025 session will look like.
A successful 2025 session would look like raising new revenue without raising taxes. And with a $400 million projected deficit, that has to happen. A successful session for us would also passing legislation that keeps our young people here. The Stay in the State Act and others that we have out there are critical pieces of legislation for the future of West Virginia, not just today, tomorrow, or this legislative session, but the next decade, and keeping our young people here, raising their families. That's what we want to see. You know what? Without the political BS attached to it.
Now, you've brought up Trump a couple times. You brought up outgoing Governor Jim Justice a couple times, incoming Governor Patrick Morsi. For you, a lot of your work is going to be involved with having a good working relationship with Speaker Hanshaw. How's that relationship?
I have a great relationship with Speaker Hanshaw. I was named to the Irish Trade Commission recently. I've been to Ireland with Speaker Hanshaw, and we have a great working relationship.
With a name like Fluharty,
that's right. We have a mutual respect for each other. We came in at the same time. We were on Judiciary Committee together, and I have great respect for Speaker Hanshaw. But I can't say for the rest of the leadership within that umbrella of the GOP that I feel like he's the shining star of that group. And I think he puts a diligent process in. The rules structure we're putting in this session, I believe, will be more deliberative, and that should make for a good byproduct. That's what the hope is.
I spoke with him a little bit about that, because there were some people saying, well, if you're taking debate off the floor from the public and putting it in the committees, which might even be more cramped and more difficult, and it seems like you're making the process harder for the public. Is that something that you disagree with in terms of at least you're being a little more transparent about the issue? Anytime
you're potentially closing the doors to the public, that's a real concern. However, I will say I believe there are safeguards in place, and it's going to be a learn as we go. This is a new system. So I will give the Speaker the benefit of the doubt on that, but I believe that we will have the opportunity for the public to participate, and that's the intention through the committee structure. Other states do it in a similar process. I can tell you that the state of Maryland follows a similar process where they allow for day one of a bill to be a public hearing. You have to sign up, you come in, and you get a limited time to speak, which is not far different from what we currently had in place to begin with.
All right, Delegate Sean Fluharty, we appreciate your time, man.
Appreciate you.
Enjoy the speech tonight, all right?
I'll try not to fall asleep.
And I'm sure we'll be checking back with Sean throughout the session, and we'll be right back after this to introduce you to someone that we're going to lean on heavily for his deep dive into politics as Outside the Echo Chamber continues from inside the state capitol at the 2025 legislative session. The West Virginia Adult Education Center has free resources to help you get your GED, learn new job skills, earn workplace certifications, and learn English as a second language. No matter where you're starting from, we're here to help. With locations all across the state, changing your life has never been easier. Learn, train, succeed, and earn more money today by visiting our website at freegedwv.com. Welcome back inside the state capitol. Before we leave, we wanted to take a few moments to introduce you to someone that is really going to be a fixture on Outside the Echo Chamber this year. We're going to lean on him for his years of experience, and when you look at dialed in to politics in the dictionary, this is the face you see. Stephen Allen Adams, years of experience, again, as I said, in not only print but also TV, radio. You are really involved with West Virginia politics, have been for a while, and we are honored to have you and to lean on your expertise and your analysis of everything that we'll be doing over the next couple of months. So as we get into this, every session's unique, and we've gone over this ad nauseum. This one with the new administration coming in, I think the mystery, the cloud surrounding all of this is how much money really do we have to work with? Because we heard for years about how this surplus was around and how, we're great, we have all this money, and then Patrick Morsi comes in and says, wait a minute, we're operating on a shortfall. So, does anyone really know for sure, or is it an accounting issue?
Well, State Treasurer Larry Pack, the former Department of Revenue Secretary, acting secretary, made this point at the legislative look-ahead last week.
Right.
It's a difference between how a husband budgets the household budget versus the way the wife budgets the household budget. Somebody asked me the other day, I'm the one that asked former Governor Justice whether there would be a projected FY26 budget hole. He said no. Someone asked me, did he lie to you? No, he didn't lie to me, but there is a distinct difference between how the Justice Administration has budgeted the last several years and how the Morrissey administration is doing their budgeting. How big the hole really is, it just depends, because you can make a state budget say practically anything you want it to say. I guarantee that there is a hole that they have to fill. There are ongoing expenses that are going to start to hit. Third Grade Success Act being a big one going this year. 2 years from now, we'll have Hope Scholarship open up for all West Virginia students,
Right,
regardless
which
of
creates a whole new can of worms.
Exactly. So you got a situation where there's expenses coming, tax cuts, that's going to cause some issues as well. They got to fill that. Now, some of that also might be just how they are choosing to kind of display it, because a governor can look like a hero if he fills a budget hole and he saved a day.
Right.
So there's some of that too, but I don't know if we'll get a full answer on that.
Now, some of the things we'll probably be going into over the next couple of months that are non-budgetary, vaccine. A lot of people wondering about vaccine regulations being eased up a lot. Is that something that you think that both houses or both chambers will take up?
I think not only will they both take it up, I think it could be one of the first things that moves this session. I think they feel that there is momentum on their side, Republicans, the governor, to be able to go ahead and do this. So I think they're going to move forward. Of course, the governor did issue an executive order, which is more of a short-term fix to get to legislature doing something more in-depth on it. I think people that are concerned about that particular issue might be better trying to get little changes to try to narrow just how wide the exemption is, maybe narrow what is a religious exemption, what does that mean? Is it just saying I have a religious exemption and not being able to show where you have it? I think the best case scenario is lawmakers that are concerned about it find a way to limit it and narrow it, but I think that's going to be one of the first things that we cover, and I think it's coming down the pike whether people want it or not. One
of the big issues last year was the foster care system that they, I think both sides agreed needed an overhaul. There was some legislation passed last year, but the House Speaker today said that there's still a lot of work to be done and that a lot of it is systemic, and when you get to you have to kind of just uproot everything.
Yeah.
You can't just legislate your way out of it. And it's an issue that we continue to see brought to light recently with the Sissonville example and that case that just got concluded where the foster care parents were convicted for what they did in Sissonville. Is that an issue that you think that they'll take up again, and will they ever get to the point where they can fix it?
Well, I will tell you, it's kind of interesting. I heard House Speaker Roger Hanshaw say something. I might have been at the Legislative Look Ahead. It might have been at Issues and Eggs yesterday to talk about how they do legislation and how they worked on this issue. And, there's been a number of big foster care bills over the last several years. And every time they think, hey, we've made a real big impact on this, then they discover there's still multiple issues. I think they recognize that the problem is greater than just trying to pass one single bill. Now, I know a group of lawmakers presented some draft legislation early at the end of last year for making tweaks to the foster care system, to CPS, deal with some of the issues we've seen with that, and child welfare in general, that they think will make some much-needed changes, positive changes in the right direction. But I do think they'll tweak at it. I think it's just going to be more taking bites out of the sandwich versus a full-on fix, because I think it's a hard issue to just fix. It's a systemic problem that we're facing right now.
Any surprises you expect over the next 60 days?
Oh boy, the problem with this session is we really don't know. In fact, Randy Smith, Senate President, said yesterday at Issues and Eggs, we would love to tell you our agenda, but we don't know what that is. I think the budget issues right now are causing people to wait and see, especially when you got what's going on at the federal level with President Donald Trump, the freezes, the tariffs, that are all going to have financial impacts on this budget. Yeah,
and not necessarily an unhealthy stance to take, to say, well, we'll see where the issues lead us and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and of course, the new process on the House side for moving bills through committees, the new committee process, that's going to slow things up a good deal, too.
The Speaker would say maybe 2 days, because there was some talk maybe it'll be 3 days for every bill, to bring it to the floor, then mark up, then discuss. But he said probably 2 days, but still a longer process.
They're going to have to experiment with it and see what works, what doesn't. And maybe this process they created doesn't work, and they'll have to tweak it on the fly. They've got the ability to do that in suspending rules that they create to be able to do that. So we'll see how that works. But, there's so many known unknowns with this session, so we're all going to be surprised.
All right, well, we'll be seeing you a lot this session. Stephen Allen Adams, you can catch his work on westvirginianews.com. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to your insight over the next 60 days.
Thanks, Rick.
All right, and thank you for joining us us for another issue of Outside the Echo Chamber. Also want to thank Speaker Hanshaw, Senate President Randy Smith, and Delegate Sean Fluharty for their time again today as well. And we'll be back with another episode next week. Remember, twice a week during the session through April. For Stephen, I'm Rick Lord. Take care.